The Phoenix Suns and the Arizona Cardinals, both franchises starving for a championship. Who's going to get fed first? We're going to figure it out right here on Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.
As always, brought to you by our friends over at Brandon Bills. I'm rocking Brandon Bills right now. Let me check. Yeah, you got a Brandon Bills hat. Steven's part of the bucket hat boys.
I've been making requests over our friends at Brandon Bills to get some bucket hats just for you, Steve.
I feel like that's a good move, and you can elevate your brand, Steven, with Brandon Bills, the perfect headwear and apparel. Use code PHNX for 20% off your first order. You guys heard the voices, Espo and Stephen PridGion-Garner. This is a PHNX Suns crew right here with me, Erik Ruby, as well. But we're going to be looking at the Cardinals side of things as well, because I found it interesting just to paint the picture here. The Cardinals are in the middle of what would be considered a rebuild. Year two of the rebuild, as PHNX Cardinals always talks about. And the roster is not full of top-end talent like superstars left and right that are going to compete. It's budding talent along with Kyler Murray, James Conner. Well, the Phoenix Suns have invested in a big three, are very clearly in the middle of a win-now window, but they kind of feel like they're in different places. The Cardinals are thriving, top of the NFC West. The Suns were thriving, and now they're sliding. So who gets fed first, Espo? Who is more likely to win a championship this year?
This year? I mean, come on. I know that I'm here in part to represent the Cardinals argument. But if we're just talking this year simply, you can't look at the Phoenix Suns who have the top flight talent and say that they're not closer. I get that the Cardinals are ahead of schedule. If you ask me over the next 5 years, who's more likely to get fed, who's going to win a championship, it's the Cardinals, based on the fact that they've built with a younger group, that there's a ceiling that they can reach. With the Suns, it's reached potential for the individual players. They've already met their expectations in terms of who they are. It's just about, can they stay healthy with the Suns for this year? But when you project out 5 years, the Suns' future is much more questionable with that, where the Cardinals have built a foundation that's solid, you think, for the next 3 to 5 years, where they're building on top of it, where the Suns are very much built for this year and maybe next year.
Do the injuries maybe play a part in that, though? Because, yes, the Suns are built for right now, but they're definitely seeming they're more likely to miss some of their best players due to injury, Steven. That is the biggest hurdle holding the Phoenix Suns back right now.
It's the biggest hurdle, but that still doesn't shift the answer to the question, though. I think you spend this money that they're spending on the team. You have these aspirations. You have the recent successes that they've seen. I mean, it's rather abundantly obvious to me. That's not even to slight the Arizona Cardinals in any capacity, but just looking at where both teams are operating financially, literally over the past couple of years, and the talent that they have on their present day rosters, the scale is tilted heavily in favor of the Suns.
So I'll make the argument for the Cardinals, because I do agree, if you're looking 5 years, the Cardinals in the middle of getting everything together are surefire, I think, the easy pick for most likely in the next 5 years over the Phoenix Suns if something doesn't happen this year. But right now, the Cardinals are continuing to get better. And sure, there is a talent deficiency, but there is not a coaching deficiency. They have their starting quarterback, a top 5 quarterback in the league when he's operating at the highest level. And you have a budding offense with guys like Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., who continue to get better as the season goes on. And they've proven that through that brutal stretch of the beginning games, they are dominating weaker opponents and they are fighting hard against the good ones, the Detroit Lions of the world, the Buffalo Bills on the road. This is a team that has the makeup to where if they can sneak into the playoffs, whether it's a wild card or not, they have the tools and they have the mentality to win a couple of games. It's definitely possible.
Yeah, but you're talking having to go in and win 4 games to win a title, having to beat unbelievable superstars with a group that's an upstart. And you're also talking about a team in the Cardinals that are one Kyler Murray injury away from being exactly where the Phoenix Suns are, and there's zero margin for error in the NFL because you play 17 games. The thing with the Suns and these injuries is you play 82. And so I think there's a better chance the Cardinals miss the playoffs than the Suns miss the playoffs, right? I think that's the reality of it, but I think the Cardinals are in a better position, overall. I think this year, yeah, superstars. I think the Suns have a better chance. But again, I think the Cardinals are built for the long term. They have their own draft capital. They have the young talent that's starting to bloom. They've got a quarterback when healthy that can be at the top. But, I just, this year, it makes zero sense to me to say that they have a legitimate chance at winning a Super Bowl. Like, it would be one of the most Cinderella stories in the history of sports, where if the Suns won, people go, okay, yeah, that's a team that probably should be right there in title contention. Nobody's shocked if the Phoenix Suns win a title. Everybody and their mother is shocked if the Cardinals win a Super Bowl. If the Cardinals get to a Super Bowl, everybody's shocked this year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's just the way that things are slanted right now.
I'll go down swinging. Give me my sword, whole army coming at me, and I'm ready to just fight my way out of it. Even though I kind of agree with you guys. But just for the sake of conversation alone, I think that the Arizona Cardinals are getting a little underrated considering their start of the season, this upcoming stretch, Seattle, Minnesota, Seattle again. I think that they go 3-0 and that all the expectations shift. And sure, an injury to Kyler Murray is going to take them out, but we all agree and have said it multiple times, if one of the big three are injured, it's over. They're not winning a championship. And you mentioned them making the playoffs. I think it's a lot more likely for, and likely in a loose sense, because obviously we are talking about massive long shots either way, but to maintain relative health for the Arizona Cardinals through a playoff run versus the Phoenix Suns maintaining health through 4 grueling rounds of playoff basketball with multiple games, multiple different opportunities to get injured. Sure, football is football. There's always a liability to go down. But you mentioned 82 games. Minimum 16 games in the playoffs. If you're sweeping everybody, you're talking about 100 games. That's a lot of chances and the likelihood for this injury-prone team to get injured. So I feel like we have to kind of take injuries out of it, because when you put the injuries in there, Kyler Murray gets hurt, you're done.
Okay,
Devin Booker gets hurt, you're done.
But if you take the injuries out, then it's a no-brainer. You made the question even easier, right,
That's
Steven?
fair.
I mean, if the Suns don't have any injuries, they just were 8-1. Like, this is one of the best teams in the league if you don't have injuries. So if you take that out of the equation, then why you shouldn't even have the conversation, right, Steven?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. To that same measure, James Conner has a history of injury that preceded his time with the Cardinals. If your RB1 gets hurt, that changes the whole dynamic of the offense. The play action doesn't hit the same. Defenses don't respect the run to that extent unless it's Kyler Murray, and that's going to be coming off of scrambling, not as a design run. That changes everything. And it puts more pressure on your defense. There's compounding things that happen on either side if one of the best players gets hurt.
Plus, you brought up coaching, but Jonathan Gannon, completely inexperienced as a head coach when it comes to the playoffs.
Sure, but if you
lost in a Super Bowl as the coordinator,
his eyes were on the Cardinals.
Took the blame from the whole city of Philly. But Mike Budenholzer's record. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, Steven?
Yeah. I mean, Bud's track record preseason too. It's different, but it's still it's just so much. There's too much in limbo when you're looking at it from that lens, honestly.
I will give you $100 if the Cardinals win the Super Bowl.
Just straight up,
Just
no
straight
bet.
up. I don't need a bet.
I'll take that.
I mean,
listen, I'm winning. Hey, listen, I don't care. I'm winning. I'm gonna get $100 if they win.
I think that the Cardinals have been a fantastic story. I think they make the playoffs. I think this is step one in what should turn into a long-term winning team that has Super Bowl chances. Mm-hmm. But it's just not this year. Mm-hmm. Like, it would be insane if they even made the Super Bowl.
Okay, so we'll look ahead the next couple of years, and we've already kind of talked about it. But first, I want to remind everybody that this episode of Southwest Bias is brought to you by Branded Bills. We're rocking our Branded Bills over here, and I have so many Branded Bills hats. You ask me why, Eric? Why? Well, because they're so great, I steal them from Max Simpson all the time. And I got to rep my guys over at ASU because, of course, they are partnered with Branded Bills. We had Sam Levitt, QB1, in here rocking a Branded Bills hat. Cole Martin and the Headspace podcast, he rocks a Branded Bills hat. Cam Scattaboo, also in studio, rocking a Branded Bills hat. All of that because they have everything from performance to style, snapback, struckers, fitted, beanies, and tees. Plus, you can put your own logo on it if you're trying to maybe activate your own valley, as in your own small business or your own team.
Dirty.
Activate
Trying
your
to
own.
activate my own valley.
Well, you can do it with Brandon Bills, dirty or not. Local company out of Mesa, Arizona. Head to brandonbills.com. Use code PHNX for 20% off your first order. And of course, our friends over at Empire Today. Not going to promise you the lowest price on your flooring. You're going to be like, why would you start an ad read with that? Well, because that's the right thing to do when it comes to flooring. They're not just going to get in, get out as quick as possible, put the cheapest flooring they wouldn't put in their own home, and then leave you stranded a year later when your flooring's coming up off the ground and you got to go find somebody else to do it. No, Empire Today makes sure it's easy, quick, and convenient, but it's done right. They can have a person in your home same day, giving you an estimate what exactly needs to be done in a time frame. Plus, they have other tools like their virtual floor visualizer that you can just hold up and say, how is this floor going to look in my business, in my apartment, in my home, whatever it is you're remodeling. Empire Today is here. We have, I was supposed to say Brandon Bills flooring. I'm glad we don't have Brandon Bills flooring.
Weird thing to have hats. No, we have the best Empire Today flooring in our Studio A that you could ever ask for. That is some good hard wood from when you do a basketball podcast. You hear the sneakers squeak as we get to the seats, which is exactly what you want when you're talking basketball. It's unbelievable. I love the flooring.
And I mentioned they're not going to promise you the lowest price, but they're going to get you money off just because you are listening to Southwest Bias. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners of Southwest Bias can receive a $350 off discount when they use promo code PHNX. Some restrictions do apply. See EmpireToday.com/PHNX for details. We talk about the future. Now we can kind of flip because we mentioned the Cardinals are in this position where they're budding. The next 5 years look promising, where the Suns are at this perilous state where if it doesn't happen this year and it maybe doesn't happen next year, you have a lot of questions about, going forward, what the Phoenix Suns can do to compete. So I'm going to flip here. I'm going to go from the Cardinals side to the Suns side as far as arguing long-term, and I'm going to look at the owner. I'm going to look at Matt Ishbia versus Michael Bidwill, because if there's one thing that Matt Ishbia has made clear is that he will do anything and everything to let this team be in a position to win. Michael Bidwill, I think, is on the right track. He made the right hires with Ossenfort and with Gannon, but I don't know if he's going to enable his franchise and enable his team to compete at the highest level every single year. I think that is definitely an argument in the Suns' favor when it comes to long-term championship aspirations.
Yeah, I mean, look, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And Michael Bidwill and his father before that showed us who they are. I mean, it's not a team that's committed to spending large money, right? There's been some questionable choices in terms of leadership and other things within the building. Do I think you can learn? Probably. Do I think he has? I don't know yet. I got to see. Jonathan Gannon and Monti Ossenfort have done some nice things, but to be fair, we've only known Ishbia for a year and a half.
That is also true.
It's easy to say I want to spend the world in your first few years, and then you look at the spreadsheets and you go, we lost how much?
Especially if you're not winning too. If you're not going to win a championship in that time.
Yeah, I get he's a billionaire, but anybody spending $400 million on anything is probably going to start looking at the economics at some point.
Well, Stephen, obviously you're a football guy too. Maybe not as much the Cardinals. I know you're a big Ravens fan, but I know that you're in tune with the NFL. It's definitely possible for teams to win with poor ownership as long as they have a good GM and a good head coach. That's definitely enough to overcome that situation.
It is enough. It just makes the job 10 times, 20 times, 30 times harder depending on how bad your GM is. And if it's the GM and the owner in tandem, that makes everything about your workplace different. Especially in comparison to how other people are competing. You got the same goal. You have restrictions that they don't. They can go out and spend. You have to work on internally developing the pieces you have in-house. Makes it tough, but it's definitely not impossible.
And it does feel like the blueprint's there for the Cardinals as well, where, okay, we get through this season where the scrappy upstarts who are kind of shocking the world and playing well. Now we become maybe a free agent destination. They have so much cap space, so much money they're able to spend, plus a boatload of picks. Like the steps 1, 2, 3 to get to 4 all make sense there for the Cardinals. It's definitely the easier one to follow. But for the Suns, you also have a superstar in Devin Booker that it is proven players want to come and play with. Superstars want to be here. So whether it's Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal continuing, whether it's minimum players who aren't minimum players coming to sign in Phoenix because of Devin Booker, or if it's you move on past everything in your current iteration, you still have your superstar Devin Booker to build around. It feels like the Suns maybe don't have a clear path, but they certainly have a path no matter what happens.
Yeah, they have a path. The NFL, there's always some creative way around the rules, right? The NFL finds a way to do that. And without, the guaranteed money in the way that the NBA has, you can clean up your mistakes quicker than you can in the NBA. The second apron and this new CBA has handcuffed teams in ways we've never seen before, which to me means we have no clue how the Suns are actually going to be able to navigate this, or any team, because we've never seen it before. And at what point does freezing assets and those kind of things really impact your ability to move on from this phase? So I think the NFL, to your point, you can get beyond having an owner that may not want to spend as much or has certain, flaws, if you will, because the structure of it set up for any team to be able to clear the deck, start over, and build a team in short order. The NBA right now is not built that way. Like, I mean, even Sam Presti's time took forever to get to where you're comfortable with where they are and saying they're a contender, right? So your two paths are go the way the Suns are. If you fail, you're likely going to have to figure out how to tear it to the studs or suffer for a few years and then try to go big game hunting again. So I think even with the ownership stuff, I think the Cardinals probably are in a better seat just because of the way the leagues are structured.
Yeah, I think because there's uncharted waters the Suns are entering, that naturally puts it in favor of the Cardinals specifically. I just think that makes more sense because you can see, like, there's proof of concept when you do things the way that they've done it, that there's a potential in multiple outcomes that can all be positive. With the Suns, especially with the new CBA deals and everything on the transactional side of things that comes with it, it looks like there's championship or peril. Essentially,
Yeah.
There's like no in between where maybe they could just fall back, get rid of one of the big three, and then bring in a bunch of other rope. Like, it just doesn't work like that. The way that it's been laid out, at least now, we'll see how it plays out over time. But as of now, we don't see much of a road outside of a championship.
No, you're pot committed with Booker and Beal,
Yeah.
and you're likely going to be committed to KD for 2 more years after this one.
Mm-hmm.
So those, this year and the 2 after, we know basically what the Suns are going to be. You can shuffle deck chairs all you want. You can move the Grayson Allens of the world for another center or move on from Jusuf Nurkic, but you're basically saying Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal are the horses that are going to have to get us there. And if they prove this year that they can't, you're going into 2 years of bigger question marks than you've had the past 2 years.
Well, maybe they'll shut us all up and both can win a championship this year. How about that? Wouldn't that be something?
Have you lived in Arizona? I know Steven hasn't, but have you lived
more
in
than
Arizona
aware.
a while?
Trust me, I'm more than aware that what I said is like winning the lottery 5 times over.
We both know that's not going to happen.
But hey, whatever happens along the way, there's only one place that you want to follow your favorite teams here in Arizona, and that is PHNX Sports. Of course, nobody from PHNX Cardinals was able to make it on today. They're just busy guys, but you can follow them, and they have 5 live shows a week, including pregame, halftime, postgame shows for every single Cardinals game, all right here on PHNX Sports. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you turn notifications on as well. And of course, you can catch the 3 of us on PHNX Suns 5 times a week. You can catch me on PHNX Sun Devils 5 times a week, which, hey, maybe they're the team most likely to win a championship, considering the fact that they're pretty dang close. So make sure you follow along all there. And of course, everything comes back to PHNX Sports. We will be back next week for yet another edition of a Southwest Bias.
As Erik said, go activate your valley.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.